After that, she noticed that Engie had stopped her from drawing her sword. Moving quickly, he cast fireballs behind her. After that, he began explaining that against a sword master, one should never allow them to draw their blade. Seeing this, Mira promptly halted the fight and reminded Alina of the importance of gauging an opponent's strength before acting. Embarrassed and frustrated, Alina ran off while shouting at them not to mock her. Seeing her reaction, Engie recalled his grandfather's advice to always follow a girl who runs away in tears, so he informed Mira he'd check on her. After finding Alina, he gently asked if she was really that upset. She then admitted that she wasn't exactly upset, but explained how she had led Class C through sheer strength alone, so she had taken pride in her power, but she lost without even drawing her sword the very first time. Moreover, she was also proud since she managed to come out on top without having a title unlike the others, but she realized she'd become overconfident, as she lamented that she was supposed to be the best. Engie began thinking that she's really in distress, hence he thought it's the best time to give her a warm embrace. However, he remembered his conversation with his grandfather back then where he was asked what he would do if a girl was feeling down. In response, he declared that he will pull her close and whisper softly that everything will be okay, but he was slapped instead because that will make it worse since the girl will think it's creepy. Knowing this, Lux advises to listen to her troubles and offer comfort by giving a solution to her problems. With this in mind, he then remembered how fiercely dedicated Alina is to being the best, so he then told Alina that out of all the battles she fought, she was the strongest of them all, but this made her wonder if he was telling the truth, so he assured her that she was indeed the most beautiful, the mightiest, and truly the best. Hearing this, Alina smiled widely, and Engie realized she was easy to encourage. Following that, she then thanked him and urged him to just call her Alina, so she could also call him by his name, to which he agreed. As they made their way back, Mira approached them and quickly apologized to Alina for her earlier remarks. Alina then assured her it was fine and admitted that the experience had taught her a valuable lesson about recognizing her own weaknesses. Still, she boasted that she was still number one regardless of any losses, which made Mira comment that Alina seemed even more spirited than before she ran off. With that, Mira then reminded her to start the penalty game. When Alina looked confused, Mira explained that the loser had to obey the winner for a month. Realizing what this meant, Alina took off running, so Mira then asked Engie to chase after her. Meanwhile, a separate scene unfolded as a discussion about an upcoming tournament to determine the kingdom's strongest warrior took place. A man then encouraged a young participant to aim for victory due to his impressive title, but the young man replied with confidence that he would win, so the man then figured out that the young man would be competing. With that, the man began to call him Frey, the Dawn's Radiance. After class, Yuri excitedly invited Engie and the others to an amazing cake shop he had recently discovered, and Alicia happily agreed. Just then, Engie was called over by Eleanor, who asked him to stay behind because she had something important on her mind. Engie immediately imagined it as an intriguing after-school summons and was half expecting a secret lesson to follow. But to his surprise, Eleanor handed him a piece of paper. At first, he thought it might be a love letter and told himself to stay calm. But upon closer inspection, he realized it was an invitation to a tournament. Eleanor then asked if he would be willing to participate, and Engie accepted. Hearing this, Iris and Yuri quickly guessed it was for the Magic Combat Tournament and congratulated him. But Engie was curious about the tournament's reputation, so Eleanor confirmed that it was a renowned event held annually to determine the strongest student in the kingdom, drawing large audiences, including many famous individuals. He also added that while 10 students from their school typically compete, there had been a lot of dropouts this year. Upon hearing this, Engie wholeheartedly accepted her request, which made her glad for his help. With that, she also mentioned that if he kept winning, he'd gain attention from noble families, and some might even want to marry him to their daughters. Seeing Engie's startled reaction, Alicia teased him by asking why he didn't seem excited when he usually loved that sort of thing. Engie then clarified that he disliked the idea of forced marriages through family influence. Thus, he declared that he believed a man should attract others with his own strength. Hearing this, Eleanor complimented him by saying he looked quite handsome, and Alicia seemed taken aback. With renewed confidence, Engie vowed to revel in a life of charm built on his own power. Knowing this, Eleanor then encouraged him by adding that he'd be a total heartthrob if he won the tournament, which made him declare that he was ready to give it his all. With that, Eleanor then led him to meet the others participating in the tournament. Hearing this, Yuri told him they'd head home first, to which Engie nodded and reminded them to eat well. Upon arriving at the meeting room, Eleanor thanked the group for waiting. Engie then noticed 2 girls and a boy in the room, and Eleanor suggested they introduce themselves. The first girl eagerly introduced herself as Frenda. Following that, she approached Engie and explained that she was his senior as a second-year student but she also asked if he had a title, and when he replied that he didn't, she exclaimed they were alike. With that being said, she then introduced the other two members as first years who already had titles, which made the other girl call her annoying. Before she could continue, the boys suddenly interrupted. He then introduced himself as Frey, the Dawn's Radiance, but he paused upon seeing Enji's face. With that, Frey finally realized that he was Enji. Meanwhile, Enji was still pondering Frey's name, and finally remembered that Frey is his little brother. Suddenly, Frey suspected that Enji had cheated his way in with Lukz's help, since he believed that all Enji could do was shoot fireballs. But Eleanor assured him that Enji had passed with flying colors on his own. Still, Frey accused her of lying, but she insisted someone as incompetent. That Frenda started to walk away while crying out that her friends were nowhere, to which Lux replied that if it happened, he would need to make a quick getaway, but this left Enji feeling unsettled and unresolved. Just then, Frenda started to walk away while crying out that her friends were nowhere to be found. Enji then tried to chase after her, but a hand stopped him. Suddenly, the girl introduced herself as Amy, who was also a fellow freshman, but Enji quickly explained that he needed to catch up with Frenda. However, Amy refused and insisted that she had something important. Despite this, Eleanor cheerfully remarked that she was glad everyone seemed to be getting along this year, though Enji wasn't so sure. After a moment of silence, Amy tried to touch Enji, prompting him to question her actions, but she just replied that he could call her Amy. After that, she then asked if it was true that he shattered the target with just a fireball, to which he replied that it couldn't be helped. Hearing this, Amy excitedly asked him to unleash that same fireball on her, which left Enji puzzled. Nevertheless, Amy eagerly requested to use the arena from Eleanor, who quickly agreed while Enji remained in a daze. At the arena, Enji hesitantly asked Amy if she was serious about this, but she reassured him by saying that she was strong enough to have a title so he didn't need to worry. With that, she proudly declared herself as Amy of the Distortion and explained that she could counter any attack that came her way. Wanting to test her magic's limits, she urged Enji to go all out. Enji then finally agreed, so Amy encouraged him to fire at full strength. Thus, he then prepared his spell, Flame of the Spirit, and launched it at her, but Amy emerged unharmed, and marveling at how it made her feel good, which left Enji confused. Undeterred, Amy urged him to hit her again. At this point, Enji realized she was a bit of a thrill seeker, but reminded himself to keep his composure, and recalled his grandfather's wisdom. Lux had once advised him that everyone has their quirks and charms, and that embracing these differences helps a person grow. Remembering this, Enji resolved to use this moment to level up as a man, even if he didn't fully understand it yet. With renewed determination, he accepted Amy's request and cast another fireball while declaring his intention to grow as a man. Meanwhile, Yuri told Iris they should cheer Enji on at the tournament, to which Iris responded confidently that Enji wouldn't lose to anyone. With that, they began asking Alicia if she would cheer him on too, but she admitted feeling a bit overwhelmed. As she mentioned her discomfort with crowds, a sudden explosion interrupted their conversation. Realizing it came from the arena, Alicia hurried off to check it out. Back in the arena, Amy complimented Enji's improved precision, though he was skeptical. With that, he mused that handling a masochist like her wasn't as challenging as he'd expected, because all he needed to do was to be the dominant one. So he then asked her if she wanted more, to which she enthusiastically replied yes. As Alicia saw this scene, she was thoroughly confused. At the beach, Enji wondered if he was near the ocean, but his thoughts were interrupted by voices arguing over who he belonged to. Eleanor then suddenly asked him if he preferred her, but Mira insisted that being petite has its own charm. Hearing this, Enji couldn't believe that Eleanor and Mira were actually fighting over him. Just as he was enjoying the attention, Yuri arrived and proclaimed that he knew Enji better than anyone else, so he was his number one. Enji then agreed, but he reminded Yuri that he was a guy. Suddenly, Alina overheard what Yuri said about being number one and stepped in to declare that she was the one and only for Enji. However, Yuri pointed out that she was just the top student, to which Alina shot back that he was only Enji's roommate. Suddenly, Iris also appeared and ordered everyone to step away from Enji, or else she vowed to make them regret it. Before she could do anything, Frenda interrupted by calling Enji a liar and demanding he take responsibility, which made him realize she was still upset with him. But before Frenda could go on, Amy chimed in and urged Enji to hit her with something more intense, but Enji only told her that this wasn't the time for that. As the arguments continued, Enji found himself overwhelmed and wondered what was going on. Suddenly, he realized that this wasn't just about popularity, and it seemed he'd somehow found himself in a harem nightmare. Just in time, Alicia arrived and asked what was happening. Desperate, he asked her to help calm everyone down, but instead, Alicia called him the absolute worst. Stunned by her words, he was left speechless and floating into the void. Suddenly, he jolted awake after having fallen out of bed. Seeing him on the floor, Yuri quickly checked on him and Engie, so he pointed out that Engie had promised everyone a mock battle in preparation for the tournament. Realizing this, Engie finally agreed to get ready, but Yuri urged him to stop stalling and eat so they could head out. Later at the arena, Alicia noted Engie's arrival. Still, she was surprised that he was still doing mock battles even though he is skilled. Hearing this, he replied that he hadn't had much practice in actual combat, leaving Alicia puzzled. Rather than explaining that most of his practice had been against his grandfather, and that he also needed to know the level of those who aren't top tier, he simply suggested they start. Just then, Yuri volunteered to take the lead. Yuri then revealed that he'd been itching for some intense combat training. Hearing this, Alicia remarked that she was intrigued by the art of battling with dark affinity, which surprised Iris as she hadn't known Yuri possessed it. Still, Alicia was curious about the type of battles they were talking about, and listened as Yuri informed Engie he was ready. As Engie prepared as well, Yuri launched an attack, but Engie casually blocked him with a single hand, which puzzled the girls. After a while, Yuri admitted defeat and acknowledged Engie's strength, even though Engie hadn't needed to do much at all. Knowing this, Engie suggested steering clear of close combat, and then offered to help Yuri train next time since they were friends, which made Yuri feel grateful. Next, Alicia declared it was her turn to take the stage, so Yuri volunteered to be the referee and signaled the start of their battle. As the fight began, Yuri couldn't help but admire their speed. Suddenly, Engie cast Flame Burst Scatter, to which Alicia countered with Raging Winds Blow, but suddenly she realized that Engie had vanished. After that, Engie reappeared behind her and cast another fireball, which she managed to dodge. Following that, she declared that a mere fireball wouldn't faze her, but his fireball exploded beneath her. As a result, it created a cloud of smoke that obscured her vision. Seizing the opportunity, Engie grabbed her from behind and forced her down. As they hit the ground, he declared that this was the end, and she agreed. But she began to question if he had really not held back, so he reassured her that he hadn't. But she doubted him after sensing that he'd still been mindful of her safety. Hence, she realized that the battle training for Engie was often an exercise in restraint. After saying that, she then asked how long he planned to keep holding her, prompting him to quickly apologize. Iris declared it was her turn. Hearing this, he then encouraged her to freely attack from any direction. Hence, the ground began to shake, and she cast Nest of Love on him and entangled him tightly. After that, she triumphantly informed him that she had practiced just for today, and that they'd be like this forever. Engie then quickly realized that if he didn't resist, he'd be stuck with her in close proximity. Unamused, Alicia unleashed a wind blast that separated them both. As a result, Engie and Iris cried out in disappointment after being interrupted in their closeness, but Alicia firmly reminded them that this was not a special training session. At the dormitory, Yuri could be heard urging Engie to get up because they were going to be late, but Engie mumbled about not wanting to leave his dream just yet. Frustrated, Yuri reminded him that today was the day of the competition. Unbothered, Engie assured Yuri not to worry and said that they'd be there in a flash if they just fly, which left Yuri confused. True to his word, they rushed to the venue by flying and arriving quickly enough to surprise Iris. Upon arrival, Engie apologized and asked if they had made it in time. Eleanor then informed him that it was only the qualifiers, and the main event would begin later in the tournament. But they were interrupted by Edward, who recognized Engie and teased him for almost being late and implying that he chickened out, but Engie retorted by asking if Edward was just there to throw shade. However, Edward's companion explains that Edward had been eager since learning about Engie's participation, so he'd better not lose. As Edward beat his friend, Iris playfully suggested Edward could have simply admitted that he was there to cheer for Engie since he was earlier than her. Taking it in stride, Engie then thanked Edward, who responded by telling him to stay safe. Suddenly, Engie remembered Alicia and asked where she was. Iris then explained that Alicia couldn't make it, which reminded him that Alicia had mentioned she struggled with crowds when they first met, so it can't be helped. Moving on, Eleanor reminded him that it was time and offered to guide him to the waiting room while the others went to the cheering section. As Engie walked with Eleanor, Iris and Yuri cheered him on. After bidding farewell to the others, Eleanor began to express her surprise at Engie's skills when she first saw it, which she thought made sense since he is ranked F. But not only had he managed to get into Rollmont, he was also competing in a tournament which is practically unheard of, and even for someone ranked as high as B. It was clear that he had put in a tremendous amount of effort. Aside from that, they were both limited to a single magic, so she mused that perhaps they were kindred spirits. Hearing this, Engie then mentioned the record held by the first below a ranked magician to win the tournament, which happens to be Eleanor, and she also held the record for the fastest match finish. Surprised, she realized Engie had researched her achievements, to which he replied that he had, especially after what happened with Iris. Confidently, he proclaimed he would break her record, which made her remark that he seemed lively. Still, she reminded him that everyone can be caught off guard, just like her, who found that no matter how far she climbed, many still refused to believe they could lose to anyone with a B rank, so she cautioned him that letting his guard down could be fatal. After saying that, she informed him that they finally arrived at the waiting room. Knowing this, she began telling him that she is counting on him specifically, to which he replied that he will definitely win. However, she reminded him that she wasn't just counting on his talent, but she wanted him to show the kingdom that hard work could lead to real change. Hearing her encouragement, Engie assured her he'd exceed her expectations and told her to wait and see. Upon hearing this, she then told him to take care. At the arena, the commentator kicked off the tournament by introducing the first match, a clash between the fierce Engie and the unstoppable Doben. She then announced the rules and explained that victory could be claimed by either knocking the opponent out or sending them into the water surrounding the arena. As the match was about to start, Yuri grew jittery, which prompted Iris to ask why he was nervous. Suddenly, they heard someone say that Engie will be just fine, and turned to see that it was Alicia who had decided to show up after all. So Iris immediately pulled her into their group to cheer for Engie. After that, the commentator signaled the beginning of the match, and Dobin began by asking if Engie was from Rollmud Academy, based on his uniform. Engie then confirmed that he was a freshman, which impressed Dobin. Hence, Dobin declared that only the truly talented can shine here. But before he could act, Engie summoned an enormous fireball. The crowd then buzzed with astonishment and commented on the fireball's size. Engie then responded to Dobin's comment about talent and said that he understood Dobin's feelings, but this left Dobin confused and asked what's with his magical power. Still, Engie remarked that being a natural heartthrob wasn't easy, and that he could never compete with Dobin's God-given face. As Engie called him a handsome devil, Dobin jumped into the water. With Dobin's plunge, Engie was declared the victor. After that, the tournament continued without delay. As the matches progressed, Engie couldn't help but find the commentator absolutely adorable. Eventually, the A-block semifinal arrived, with the commentator introducing Engie, who had advanced using only basic fireball magic, and Frenda, who had risen through the ranks with her tricky magic. She also noted that both A and B blocks were filled with students from the prestigious Rollmud Academy, which made Engie realize that Frey was still in the running. Before the match started, Frenda reminded Engie that there should be no hard feelings whether they win or lose, and he agreed. With that, she then revealed her special ability that she forgot to mention, which is an A-rank water magic, and this makes her the perfect counter to his fire. Still, Engie confidently stated that her water wouldn't reach him, but she insisted that it would hit him and began casting a powerful swirl water spell. Seeing this, Iris and Yuri watched in awe as the swirling water seemed to twist and target Engie. But then, Frenda noticed something odd. Engie then declared that her attack did not arrive, which made her notice that her water was disappearing. In disbelief, she began asking him if he had neutralized her magic with a fireball. Engie then confirmed this as he pressed forward. In response, she quickly cast a water ball to defend herself, but she noticed that she's unable to hold back any longer and feared she'd be finished at this rate. Determined, she summoned a raging tornado of water. Watching from the stands, Alicia instantly recognized it as a grand-scale spell that only a few sorcerers could wield. Feeling confident, Frenda apologized to Engie and warned him that he was about to be blown away. Unfazed, Engie merely praised her impressive skill. Still refusing to retreat, Frenda cast Flame Dance and declared that patching up a hole with such magic was easy. However, she was startled when Engie had vanished. Suddenly, she sensed him behind her. But before she could react, he had cast fire directly at her, and this made her wonder why he was right behind her. Still, she ended up knocked back into the water, and Engie was declared the victor. Later at the backstage, Engie was approached by Amy, who revealed that she had faced Frey in battle and lost. Aside from that, she also told him that she planned to take a break from magic because Frey's power was unsettling. Setting that aside, she then admitted that she came all this way to cheer for him. Just then, an announcement summoned the contestants to the gate for the next round. After knowing this, Engie then thanked Amy for her support and assured her that he would win. As the audience settled in, the commentator hyped up the match everyone had been waiting for. She then introduced Frey as a double S-ranked radiant element wielder born only once a century, and is also the next candidate for Pinnacle. After him, Engie was introduced as the F-ranked underdog who had climbed the ranks using only a single spell, which is the Fireball. Hearing the crowd's divided cheers, Engie noticed the girls were calling out for Frey, while the boys cheered him on. Hearing this, he realized that his cheers sound nothing like that and Frey is really popular. Knowing this, he became even more determined to steal the spotlight. Before the match began, Frey scoffed and asked how someone as weak as Engie could beat his opponent, but Engie boldly replied that he was strong. However, Frey dismissed it and mocking his limited ability to cast only Fireball. In response, Engie countered by explaining that it was precisely his focus on Fireball that allowed him to perfect it, and he would win because of that mastery. Unconvinced, Frey denied that someone of Engie's rank could achieve such mastery. As the match started, Frey launched an attack with Luminous Blade. Witnessing this, the commentator announced his explosive opening move, but Engie managed to dodge effortlessly. Hearing this, Frey was left in disbelief. Wasting no time, Engie then began using this magic to cast Fire Ignition, and Frey quickly countered with her own skill. Seeing Frey's magic, Engie asked if it was scattered magic or an advanced defensive spell. Frey then confirmed it, and added that only a genius like him could wield such power. With that, he then launched an Aurora Beam, but he grew frustrated as he failed to hit Engie even though his attacks moved at the speed of light. 2 years ago, Lux had actually shared vital advice with Engie on how to become the ultimate. Hearing this, Engie thought he would talk about chests, but Lux questioned instead what was going on in his mind. Setting that aside, Lux clarified that speed was key when battling a master of light magic. He then explained that Engie must perceive magical energy, read his opponent's aura, and control every aspect of his spell, whether in terms of intensity, direction, and purpose, as if mastering the mind's eye. To match light speed attacks, Engie would also need to heighten his magical power and concentrate it to keep up. But Engie doubted he could surpass the speed of light since he is already on the brink of death multiple times with his training. Hearing this, Lux questioned his determination and reminded him that love will surely follow him when he becomes the strongest. Motivated, Engie finally committed to his training, which made Lux glad for his honesty. As a result, he spent 2 years in the presence of the light of the pinnacle, and trained to the brink of death every day compared to Frey. With that, Engie easily evaded Frey's attacks, prompting him to taunt Frey by saying he was as transparent as glass and couldn't match their grandfather. But Frey refused to back down and declared that he would become the pinnacle, so Engie had no right to stand in his way. Meanwhile, their father Oro watched in surprise to see Engie whose talent he regarded as limited to fire. However, the voice corrected him by explaining that it wasn't talent, but aptitude. The person then explains the distinction between aptitude that is about suitability and how it's not a talent. Upon turning around, Oro realized that it was Lux and demanded an explanation for his arrival, but Lux dismissed him. Lux then announced that he was there to support Engie, whom he had mentored, but Oro scoffed and declared that no amount of honing could make up for Engie's low aptitude, so the victory will belong to Frey, who is a double S. On the other side, Frey began preparing to end the battle. Seeing this, Honor began noting that she had never seen him this driven. Meanwhile, the others began to speculate on whether Frey would use his Aurora spell, which is a breathtaking yet ominous technique. With that, Frey proudly declared that as the light of dawn, his magic could easily crush Engie's fireball. Undeterred, Engie challenged him to try, and declared that he was ready to face it head-on. Knowing this, Frey then cast the light of dawn, and Engie countered with his charged particle cannon. As their attacks collided, the impact affected everyone nearby, but one of them was blasted away, leaving Engie as the only one standing. Though Frey was thrown into the air, he refused to give up since he was still far from the person he aspired to become. Despite his efforts, Engie was declared the champion. When Oro heard this, he refused to accept the loss, and insisted that Frey was the one who wielded the Aurora. Lux responded by acknowledging Frey's remarkable talent, but he observed that he was spreading himself too thin. He also added that while Frey was the most versatile among his peers, he lacked a single defining weapon, so even his grand magic paled in comparison to Engie's. With that, Lux then suggested that Oro take a step back from his extreme ambitions, since he couldn't entrust his grandchildren to someone who only saw his own son as a tool, but Oro rejected Lux's criticism. With that, Oro considered that even if Frey failed, Engie still stood as a contender for the pinnacle. Lux then acknowledged this, but expressed doubts that Engie would return, which made Oro cut him off, and insisted that it was a family matter.